Hi, welcome to Lockdown Lessons. I hope you're safe and well wherever you are. As you know, throughout lockdown, we've been running our lessons, and we have one more week of our live lessons. And of course, there is a return to schools on the 8th of March. But we recognise that some of you might not be at school, or you might continue to need some extra support. So please, if you do need any extra support, get in touch with us and we'll try and help you. You can contact us on our Facebook page or on our email, which is lockdownlessons@skoolcornwall.com. We want to be available should you have any questions beyond lockdown lessons, which is of course ending next week. I should say thank you very much indeed for those of you that have been stalwart participants, and we're pleased to have helped, but it's also been great that you've been on the other end of the well, not the other end, but the other side of the screen. So if you have any questions beyond next week, please do get in contact with us and we will be very pleased to help. So today's lesson is a little different to normal. Normally, we'll go over a particular text or we'll go over a particular type of or style of writing, but I wanted to really hone in today on analysing, and specifically really working on the toolkit that you have for analysing language. I really want you to become avid readers, and I think becoming avid readers is is a great enabler actually. If you read books, if you read other people's ideas, I think you'll have a more enriched life. However, I do recognise that just sitting down and reading on the page can be a little bewildering, a bit confusing perhaps at times, and maybe even can send you to sleep. So this lesson, particularly this lesson, is designed to give you the beginnings of a strategy to be able to understand what's going on the page. And understanding what's going on the page is a challenge. But if you can overcome that, who knows what you can achieve in your life. So just having a quick look at what this is. This is very clearly, what? Is this music? Is this something else? Well, I think it's not music, for a start. That is a score. If you take a musical instrument to that and you play those notes, that then becomes music, but that absolutely is not music. It is a score. And it works in just the same way that language works. You know, the word fish, as I keep on banging on about, I'm sorry, I should have picked a different word. Fish is very clearly not that. A fish isn't that. That is a word. That is a word. A fish is something that swims in water. So language is a system of representation, and today we're going to be looking very specifically at sound, how sound works in language. And today's lesson we're going to be working on not only what sounds to watch out for or to listen out for, but really how to also write about them in texts. And I thought it was a good idea to spend a bit of time on this because we want to build up a skill set. So when you look at language, you're going to be able to write about different elements of sound, and that will help provide you an evaluative analysis and show the person that's marking your work that you are analytical. And it also gives you a rich and deep understanding of how language operates. So we're focusing on our method, our toolkit, which is of course the triangle. Over the course of next week, actually I'm going to work on structure and metaphor, which will finish the week's lessons next week. But ultimately, when we go to language, rather than just staring at it, the black and white lines on a page, or even just decoding the words, like how do I say terminology. It's really about thinking about how sound works in language and how it can create and add meaning in the same way that a score is used to help us, is used for musicians so they can sound out the notes, so too is language on the page. There's such a great similarity between these two things. So what I'd like you to do, please, is have a pen today and note down what we're talking about, because it really will inform your analysis. So, beginning then at the beginning. So, language is a system of representation, and it began really only verbally. And the letters on the page represent sounds, which themselves represent things. Okay, but we're just going to focus today specifically on letters and letter sounds representing sounds, and we're going to be focusing first on sibilance. Okay, now this is something that I do enjoy doing, but normally I do this with students in front of me as opposed to invisible to me. So we're going to practice some sibilant sounds. So sibilance, and there's plenty of sibilance in sibilance, is the s sound. It can also be the sh sound, or the ch sound, or the z sound, but they're all sibilant sounds, and they're made by employing the tongue as a kind of barrier between the teeth. Wherever you are, I would like you, please, to try and make the S sound. S. And you'll see that there's a flow of air from the lungs through the mouth. S, ch, 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 z. These sounds are, the airways are not blocked. So it's just worth recognising that the sibilant sound is a continued flow of air. Okay? When we see the S on the page, or the CH, or the SH, or the Z on the page, these are sibilant sounds. So let's see them working. So here we are, a bit of sibilance on the page, and this is, this is one you've probably seen before. This is the snake attack from Roald Dahl. And as I read it, note down what the sibilance is and try and think about what the sibilance is doing. What is its function? I can't speak. What is its function? Okay. He stood there absolutely motionless, watching the great black deadly snake as it glided so quickly over the gravel before him. Its small, triangular snake's head was raised up in the air, and I could hear the soft rustling of the gravel as the body slid over the loose stones. Now, many of you have seen this before in lockdown lessons, but I just thought I'd draw our attention to it again and focus on sibilance and just think about what is the purpose here. Well, one of the purposes is that sibilance imitates. This is a snake attack, and what's beautiful about Roald Dahl's writing is that you can hear the snake before, almost before we see it properly, and you can certainly hear it as it travels over the gravel in this instance. Have a look at the last few lines. Its small triangular snake's head was raised up in the air, and I could hear the soft rustling of the gravel as the body slid over the loose stones. I mean, I think that's really beautiful. I think that's language at its best. It's really imitating the sound. What I think is really amazing is that the S's that sound the snake come in between lots of other words. There are plosive There are plosive sounds there as well. And it's almost like that S and its appearance throughout those last few lines appears amongst other sounds in the way that you don't hear every piece of gravel as the snake moves over the loose stones. You only hear a few. And I think it's really beautiful. So there, the sibilance is imitating. And that's pretty clever. But of course, sibilance does a bit more than that. So what I'd like you to do is take your pen. Apologies, I haven't done what I should have done, is stretch these out. Is take your pen and write these down. So when we're talking about sibilance, we're talking about the soft C, the S, the Z, the CH, and the SH. And look here. What does sibilance do in these words? So we've got slither. It's worth remembering that letter sounds can appear anywhere in a word. We're not just focusing on the first word, the first letter of each word, but these examples predominantly have sibilance in the first letter. So we've got slither, we've got snake, we've got sinister, and we've got assassin. What is sibilance doing here? Yeah, lovely, Chloe. Yeah, absolutely right. So there we've got the sibilance appearing in Roald Dahl's work, stood, motionless, small, soft, slither, loose stones. Fantastic. And I love the way, as I said, the way that sibilance appears through the lines, but not everywhere, but quite a lot, almost imitating the way the snake moves over the gravel. In this bit then, we've got, on this slide, we have different words that utilise sibilance. What is the sibilance doing here? What is its purpose? What is it stressing? Now, for many years I taught Lord of the Flies, and Lord of the Flies is it's a horror story, but it's about boys trapped on an island, and it's very much it's a beautiful book actually, very powerful, and it details some boys on an island, and Lord of the Flies is another word for the devil, and another word for the devil is Satan. S sounds can often appear super dangerous, and they imply danger, they imply threat, they imply worry, they imply almost a tension, but they come from that place. So sibilance, in some instances, can sound dangerous, can sound perhaps aggressive, can sound very threatening. So if we look at these words here, assassin, sinister, loads of S sounds in there, and the S sounds really suggest danger, perhaps fear, perhaps even evil. So just take a note there. So sibilance, and perhaps examples of those words, sibilance perhaps implies danger, threat, evil. Language is all about context. Not all words with S's in are words full of danger, but they can be. Our story about, or rather Roald Dahl's story about the snake attack, we'd expect that snake attack to be dangerous and scary. So when you're analysing words and sounds, be mindful of the context that these sounds appear in. If you're reading a story all about a fluffy teddy bear that happens to employ lots of sibilance, perhaps that story isn't about danger, but about something else. You, as a reader, you have to use your judgment. So sibilance can appear gentle. So here are some more. Soothe, kiss, cushion, sweet. What does sibilance do here? My son, who is very beautiful indeed, when he was very young, now he's pretty young now, he's 4, when he was very young, he would often tip over particularly when he's trying to walk. Now he doesn't cry so much, my son. But he used to cry a lot. And when he did, we would pick him up and we would make the shh, 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 shh sound. We would make that sibilant sound. Sometimes sibilance means the opposite of danger and threat, but sibilance can soothe. Sibilance can comfort. So perhaps sibilance in a different context, different words can stress gentleness, can stress soothing qualities, can be comforting. You can download an app which plays white sounds. So if you've got a young baby, we used to use an app to make sure our children, to make sure they weren't really all that bothered, but when they heard the sibilance, they would sleep. And when they heard the white noise, of course white noise is a sibilant sound, they would go to sleep, because in the womb, the sound of the body that they would hear in the uterus, this is the theory, soothes them. So words like soothe and cushion and kiss employ this sibilance, and it has that soothing, calming quality. So that is how sibilance works. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about how to write about that in your analysis. But I just want you to get that down. So sibilance can either be really dangerous, it can stress danger, but it also can stress calm, a soothing quality, a gentleness. Okay, now we're going to move on to a different sound. And we're focusing on 3 sounds today, and the second sound is the plosive sound. So before we get stuck into words with plosives, I'd like you to do the sound game with me. And this time we're going to make the plosive, and we're going to be focusing on a plosive P. Now here, as opposed to the S, where we're letting a free flow of air through our mouth, now we're going to arrest and stop the air with our lips, and then we're going to release the sound. That's the P sound, P, P. Actually, the P sound is not voiced, P. But when you make that sound, try and make the B sound now, B, B. If you want to make a really powerful B sound, you might fill your mouth up with more air and have a greater release of energy, B. The plosive is all about the release of energy, and as such, the release of energy can imply different things, which we'll come to in a second. The plosive sounds are found in the letters P, B, D, and T. So when you're reading on the page, listen out for those. You can spot a plosive, certainly, but try and listen to the words as you read. Okay, let's have a look at some plosive words here. So these plosive words, we've got apple, bubble, pop, and jump. These words, many of them, imitate. The word bubble is full of imitation, isn't it? And you know, language is so super clever. So bubble, the plosives seem to begin and end that word in a very similar way that a bubble surrounds oxygen. Language tries to imitate. You know, when those cavemen I talked about a long time ago see the fish, they want a sound for it, and the sound that they make for it is meant to represent the thing. So for plosives, we've got bubble, pop, jump, and plosives can be super playful, and writers often use plosives to convey playful things, and they certainly stress playful qualities. So that's one aspect of the plosives. They convey and stress something playful, joyful. But plosives can also stress something else. They can stress a violence, an aggression, a dynamism, a danger. And plosives can be full of shock. They have that. They can have that real dynamic quality that stresses explosion. It's no surprise that word has plosives in. So let's have a look at these more dynamic plosives. Punch, destroy, detonate, damn. These letter sounds do, it's very impossible, I think, to say these softly, to say these gently. Plosives can be forceful and they can stress the writer's ideas. They can stress power and force and energy. And let's have a look at that in practice. So here we've got the Jungle Book. Again, you probably have seen this. And this is the story of Rikki-Tikki-Tavi and the story of, this is the first appearance of another snake. Now, I'm not interested necessarily in you focusing on the sibilance, or you can do. Have a look at the plosive. Then inch by inch, out of the grass rose up the head and spread hood of Nag, the big black cobra, and he was 5 feet long from tongue to tail. In tongue to tail, there is a force and an energy, and in big black cobra, this alliterative repetition of the B. Alliterative is to do with alliteration and the pattern in language, the repetition. That really stresses force and power and energy. Plosives can emphasize playful qualities and stress energy, dynamism, force. So I have asked this question many, many times when I was at school, and many of my students have asked this question to me many, many times. I haven't revealed what that question is yet, I'm about to. If we take any text, a myriad behind me, and we started analysing letter sounds, as we're doing today, you might think, well, did the writer really think about all this stuff? Was the writer really thinking about using playful plosives or using evil sibilants? Did he really go into that much detail? And the truth is, yes. That's what writers do. They go into an enormous amount of detail, and the sound that they employ in their stories, in their writings, are essential and really, really important. Sound is integral to our study and appreciation of language. That's why it's so important, if you haven't already, to download BorrowBox, the free library app, and start listening to audiobooks, because sometimes, unfortunately, and it's a great problem, but sometimes language on the page is just black and white. Oh look, there we are, a chapter all about language. It's just black and white, and what we have to do something special to those black and white lines on the page. We have to really be aware of the different qualities of language. Language began here, designed for our ears. Language was not designed to be written down. We have since written it down. But when you're reading a text, be aware of how it sounds. And now, be aware of the sibilant sounds. Is the sound you're looking at meant to be dangerous, full of fear? Or is it meant to be soothing? Is the sound meant to be playful? Or is it meant to be violent and explosive? So let's have a look at another of perhaps my favourite sound of all, and this is the fricative. Fricative with that C in the middle. So fricatives are the F, the V, and the th sound. These are fricative sounds. That th sound is quite interesting. We'll come to that in a bit, but fricatives, let's all make a fricative. Today I'm really struggling with saying words. Hopefully you'll understand what I'm talking about. So fricatives, this is the F and the V and the th sound. And these operate in a similar way to sibilance. So just like sibilance, where you've got that flow of air from the mouth, the fricative stops that flow a little, not totally, but employing the teeth and the lips. Try and make that F sound. And the V. So these are fricatives. And what I love about this sound is it imitates air and force and violence. It sounds like a cruel wind. And it's also a sound that's full of pressure. The plosive is full of pressure, but the fricative is that more sustained pressure. And I feel sometimes it's like a whip or a flash of wind. So let's have a look at words that employ the fricatives. So these are fight, force, violence, vicious. And here these fricatives are certainly imitating something. There's something even about the word fight, just similar, I suppose, to the word punch, that seems to imitate the sound of the thing. I think that all language does this, tries to imitate the sound of the thing. But also the sound, fight, force, violence, vicious. These are sounds that stress more violence. They stress aggression. They stress perhaps even fear, again, danger. These sounds suggest all these different things. They imitate too, just as all sounds, but the fricative F stresses violence, aggression, danger. Equally, the fricative F could be in another context. Let's have a look at it in another context. So we have the fricatives in much more gentle words: feather, flower, fluffy, baffle. So feather fascinates me. So all these words suggest something that's gentle and soft. Feather fascinates me. So feathers on birds do two things. They, ducks, for instance, who have a great deal of feathers, and have a particular oil in their feathers, and they can repel water. But there's also another quality of feathers. So you take the eider-down duck that lives in the Arctic, and it spends almost all its time on the sea. Those feathers are taken from the animal, actually, cruelly, but often used in blankets, in duvets, feather duvets. And feather, the thing itself, traps air. Those eider-down ducks, they are enabled to keep warm because the feather is trapping air, and the word does the same thing. You have the fricative F and the fricative F, and it's trapping air. Words are imitating the world, and of course it's suggesting something that is really, really soft and really gentle. You have to use your judgment. When you're analysing sound, you have to decide whether something is soft or gentle or soothing, or whether something is violent, whether something is aggressive. And this really is how we write about this. We'll work on this a little bit. Let's see if we can. Let me show you a poem actually before we get on to how to write about it. This is the first verse of a beautiful poem by William Wordsworth, and see if you can spot those fricatives and have a think about whether those fricatives are stressing something violent and aggressive or something dangerous. This time I'm not going to read it out loud. You try and read it out. Really makes a difference when you sound out language. We're looking particularly at those fricative Fs and the fricative th sound, and maybe even the fricative v sound. I wonder, is the writer stressing aggression, violence here, or is he stressing something else? Of course, you're absolutely right. I'm sure you've decided very quickly that William Wordsworth is not writing about the violence of daffodils, the danger that such a pretty flower poses to us, but rather he's stressing the gentle quality. There's something very, very soothing about this poem. It is almost like standing in front of the flower, watching it bend back and forth, fluttering and dancing on the breeze. Fluttering, floats, veils, daffodils, full of F's there, beneath. So writers are very conscious of the sounds that they're employing, and the best writers use words that employ the best sounds for their purposes. And if you haven't yet independently sought out some poems of your own choosing, have a look. Maybe have a look at any old poem today, and you'll probably see in a great poem the writer really using sound to emphasise and stress. And that's what this lesson's all been about. What different sounds are and how sounds stress and emphasise. And to write about sounds, we use words like emphasis, power, stress, stresses, powerful, emphasise. And here are some examples then. So, the sibilance in whisper seems to stress the gentleness in the story. That's how I want you to write about it when you do your analysis. The plosive in power seems to stress force. You could be more specific. You could say the plosive P in power, or the fricative in fear, the fricative F in fear, or the sibilant S in whisper. You can be more specific, but I want you to write about it when you're and say it seems to stress, it seems to emphasise, it seems to make the idea more powerful. Understanding how language works is a study of sound, and I think that language is music. And I think we've come away from that understanding a bit too much in education. So when you're next reading a text, try and think about how it sounds and try and apply some of the things that we've gone over in this. Yeah, thank you, Chloe, perfect. It creates calm. Try and have a think about how sound adds to meaning and how sound shapes meaning. Sound is an integral part of how we analyse language, and it sits at the bottom of our toolkit. There we've got sound. It's very, very small. Next time I show this triangle, I'll try and make that a bit bigger. You've got sibilants, plosive, vowels, nasals and fricatives. Sound sits at the bottom of our analysis triangle. And when we go to language, it's the last thing we write about. The first thing we write about is metaphor. The second thing we write about is the shape of words. The last thing we write about is sound. So, we'll have a look at those two later. I want to give you everything I know. This lesson is not designed just to fill a void, but rather give you the substance of how to analyse language today, how to analyse sound. And this process of analysing in a step-by-step way is proven. It's something I've been using for years and years and years. And when the penny drops, when students really start to using it, their results soar. And also their understanding soars. Language is a music. It's designed for our ears. What's written on the page is a score. So take care. Have a great weekend. We're back next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it'll be, of course, our last week. So if you've got any questions, please get in touch at lockdownlessons at Skool Cornwall, and we're going to be very much there to help you, even if this is watched in 2 weeks' time. If you've got a question, please get in touch, and we'd only be too pleased to help. Okay, all the very best, and we'll see you next time. Bye.